Bubba is You teaches you the absolute bare minimum you need to succeed, and leaves you to figure out the rest through intuition and perhaps a bit of trial and error. It's also damn hard. Yes, Bubba is You is essentially the Dark Souls of puzzle games. I know it's cliche, but hear me out. There's also an interconnected world, hardly any story to speak of, although fans insist there is one by linking together loads of random lore, and Forbes has even written articles stating that Bubba is You needs to be both easier and harder. Okay, maybe not all of that is true. You know what, forget the comparison, Bubba is You is just hard. Really, really hard. Bubba is You is an ingenious puzzle game that forces you to work within a strict set of rules to complete each level, but also gives you control over those rules, letting you break them apart to make your own. Many levels have multiple solutions, and while the phrase "think outside the box" is a little overused, not to mention nearly always incorrectly used, it probably does apply to a game where you can get around a solid wall by changing the physical nature of the wall so that it can be pushed out of the way, or walked through, or even controlled directly to reach the goal at the end of the level. You can even change it so that the wall is the goal at the end of the level. My only complaint with Bubba is You is unfortunately a significant one. It's too tough for me. That's another thing it has in common with Dark Souls, I guess. There are huge leaps in difficulty, and even though there are around 200 puzzles in total, far too many of them were outside my skill level. The content I could complete was absolutely stunning, even if I did have to stare at many of them for half an hour and doubt my own sanity. I still had a good experience with Bubba is You, and for that experience I'm going to give the game 4 stars out of 5. Given that this is a puzzle game, I will endeavour to keep the spoilers light and mainly use early game footage and not show the full solutions to the tougher puzzles. Bubba is You is a tricky game to explain because the win condition changes with each puzzle. Even the character you control can vary, so while you're usually controlling a small sheep called Baba, you could instead be controlling a moon, key, a flag, or even multiple Babas. The best way to explain it is to walk through a couple of simple examples from the early game. The scattered words you see on screen need to be arranged in the form of a noun, then a linking word, then a condition. The most common set of words you'll see together is Bubba is You, because something has to be you, if not you can't do anything. These phrases are the rules. In this level, Bubba starts in a small room with the rule "wall is stop." This rule means the wall will stop you from moving through it and therefore you can't go anywhere. So what do? Well, if you use Bubba to push the words around and break the rule up, the walls will no longer function as stop, and Bubba can now move through them. The easiest way to win from here is to create a rule saying flag is win, and then touch the flag to complete the level. However, it's important to note that you have options. You could also make wall is win to make touching the wall a win condition, or even create a second rule for Bubba so that not only is there Bubba is You, but also Bubba is win. You then win automatically because you are already touching Bubba, so to speak. Early levels are all about manipulating these fairly straightforward rules. If there is a wall of deadly skulls around the win condition, then just break the rule that states the skulls are deadly. A favourite trick of mine is to take control of the main environmental hazard that's causing problems in the first place. For example, if you change Bubba is You to wall is You, you can move the entire wall around until part of it hits the win condition. It doesn't matter if some of the wall hits a hazard, you just need one part of the thing you control to still be alive. Or there's the puzzle with a huge pool of lava between Bubba and the win condition. It's worth noting that although the lava looks deadly, it's not automatically going to harm you without specific rules in place. In this case we have the rules lava is hot and Bubba is melt, so clearly the lava is a problem. While I'm sure there are a bunch of other solutions, my approach was to add lava and is to Bubba is You, to form lava is Baba is You, which meant every square of lava turned into a Baba that I could control. Then I just moved the massive bundle of Babas over to the win condition. If you could remove and change all the obstacles in every level, it wouldn't be much of a challenge, so many of the key rules are blocked off. If wall is stop is surrounded by walls, then chances are you won't be able to do much about that rule. You also can't pull any blocks, so blocks placed against the edge are of limited use. By the way, if it ever looks like I'm pulling the blocks in the footage, then that is just me using the handy rewind feature. If you end up buying Bubba is You, let me offer a quick bit of advice. Don't let the obvious nature of an item restrict your thinking. As an example, when you're first introduced to open and shut conditions, a key is linked to open and a door to shut, giving the obvious scenario of pushing a key into a door to open it. However, these items only work this way because of the rules on screen, and there's nothing to say you can't have key is shut and door is open, such that pushing the door into the key will remove the key that's blocking your way. Additional nouns and conditions are slowly added, so you can adjust the nouns with words like lonely or facing, and there are a few new link words as well, such as has and. The has link adds a bunch of complexity by letting you add items inside other items. For For the most part though, complexity doesn't come from the sheer number of words you can play around with, but from the ways in which you can use them. Not all of the puzzles are as freeform as those early samples I described. While some puzzles have multiple solutions, others require you to move in an incredibly specific way to set in motion the correct chain of events. The move condition makes other pieces move with every turn you take and requires you to think a few steps ahead to make sure everything is lined up in the correct place. Add in moving conveyor belts and gravity and things can get incredibly complicated. Fortunately, you don't need to complete every puzzle to progress. Most areas only make you beat around half the puzzles before you can move on, which was a real lifesaver given how utterly perplexing some of them can be. For around 10 hours, Bubba Is You is almost a perfect puzzle game, equal parts satisfying and stimulating with a hint of frustration thrown in for good measure. If a sign of a good puzzle is one that makes you think about it while you're not looking at it, then Bubba Is You has them in spades. There's nothing better than getting stuck, stepping away for a bit and coming back later to solve it in a few minutes. At some point though, the puzzles crossed from frustrating but satisfying to just frustrating. In the first couple of worlds I was able to complete all the puzzles plus a bunch of the optional ones, and felt like I was learning how to play the game. By the time I was on world 6 or 7 I could barely complete enough puzzles to move on to the next area, and I eventually hit a number of roadblocks which completely stopped me moving forward. That might have been bearable, but the real problem was that I stopped enjoying the types of puzzles on offer. Instead of using crazy leaps of logic to solve problems in weird and wacky ways, you had to do things in a very specific way, often from the second you take control. The problems aren't so much what words need to go where, and more exactly where should I put this block on the screen, when should I move it, and from what direction. Even this wasn't a huge issue for these smaller puzzles, but when you're presented with a huge screen and a lot of moving parts, your mindset changes from I'll try this one again later to I never want to see this puzzle again. Personally, I preferred the puzzles that let me mess around to see what solutions I could come up with, and I enjoyed going back to puzzles I'd already solved to do them a different way. Eventually I resorted to a guide to get past a few of the tougher levels and make sure I'd seen most of the content on offer before writing this review. I'm not taking this part into account for the review score. As I mentioned earlier, I had a great 10 or maybe 12 hours with Bubba Is You, and just because many of the puzzles were way out of my league, that shouldn't distract too much from the positive part of the experience. And to be fair, some of these solutions to the harder puzzles were so complex or at times wonderfully simple that I still enjoyed cheating my way through them. I also have a bunch of puzzles left that I'm going to return to a couple more times just to see if I can beat them. Now, I'm not one to miss an opportunity to push blame onto someone else, so I do have an excuse lined up. Namely, the tutorials could have been better. When a new mechanic is introduced, such as the teleport condition, you're usually given a nice and simple example of how it works. However, it's so simple that it doesn't really teach you anything. Now for teleport, that isn't so bad. Shock horror, teleports things. Other examples though are a little less clear cut and there's less visual information on the screen to show the results. The float condition seemed simple enough at first and I thought I'd understood it, but judging by examples in later levels I clearly hadn't. Likewise, the shift condition is simple when paired with a conveyor belt, but I didn't entirely understand how it worked when paired with other items such as Barber. So yeah, I struggled with Barber Is You, but not until I played for at least 10 thoroughly enjoyable, stimulating and baffling hours. A smoother difficulty curve and a few more tutorial missions would have been appreciated, but if you're at all curious or appreciate a thoroughly different type of puzzle game, I highly recommend you give it a go. Okay, that's all from me today. Please consider liking, sharing and subscribing if you enjoyed the video, and tell me how stupid I am in the comments. I have a Patreon if you'd like to support the channel financially. Reviews of indie games don't get a lot of attention, so Patreon support really helps me keep doing them. $1 a month gets you your name in the credits and a Patreon role in my Discord server. I think a review of The Division 2 is coming next, and after that I'm not sure. I'm working on a bunch of projects, so stay tuned. Alright, until next time, cheers.